There are some places that you visit simply because you know they're old, and then there are places that stop you in your tracks. St Andrew's Churchyard in Leyland is very definitely one of the latter. I came here expecting to find an interesting old churchyard, perhaps a few ancient stones, a sundial, the usual collection of ecclesiastical curiosities, but what I found was something rather more wonderful. This place is absolutely packed with history, and for someone who loves old gravestones, particularly those wonderfully weathered survivors from the 17th and 18th centuries, St Andrews is something of a treasure chest. Look at these stones. There are markers here from the 1600s, the 1700s, and what really struck me was just how wonderfully legible so many of them remain. Some have been moved from their original positions, while others remain in situ, still quietly marking the places where people were laid to rest centuries ago. Some of these 17th century stones are astonishingly crisp. The lettering is still there, the names are still there, the dates are still there. 400 years after somebody carved them into stone, you can stand here and actually read the words. And I have to say, this is probably the most marvellous collection of 1600 grave markers I've come across in a while. There's something quite magical about that, because these aren't simply pieces of old stone. They are fragments of individual lives. People who lived, worked, loved, worried, worshipped, grew old, and eventually came here. And the names have somehow survived. But then St Andrews had another surprise waiting for me, and this stone completely stole my heart. I came across this extraordinary monument bearing the name Joannes Jacobs, and I wanted to emphasise the date here because it is absolutely extraordinary. 1461. Let me say that again. 1461. We're talking about the 15th century. This stone predates the Tudor period. It predates the Reformation. It takes us right back into the medieval world. And here it is, still sitting in this churchyard, carrying the name of a man who lived more than 5.5 centuries ago. Joannes Jacobs is described as a learned man, a man associated with science and learning, and the inscription itself is wonderfully erudite. This isn't merely a simple, here lies so-and-so inscription. It's a piece of intellectual history carved into stone. And then you notice something else. Carved upon the monument is part of the work of the Roman poet Horace. And this is where things get particularly wonderful. The inscription refers to Libitina, the ancient Roman goddess associated with death, corpses, burials and funerals. Horace invokes Libitina in his famous Ode 3.30, in which he declares that he will not wholly die because part of him will escape Libitina. Think about that for a moment. A Roman poet writing nearly 2,000 years ago. A 15th century learned man and a churchyard in Lancashire, all brought together in one extraordinary piece of stone. This is precisely the sort of thing that makes me completely lose myself in old burial grounds, and I absolutely love this stone. It is without question one of the most marvellous stones I have ever encountered. There's something about standing beside something made in 1461 and being able to see the words carved into it, words that have survived centuries of weather, changing fashions, changing belief, and generations of people coming and going. It's quite humbling. And frankly, once I'd discovered that, I could quite happily have gone home. But St Andrews wasn't finished with me yet, because dotted around this churchyard are even more little treasures. There's a lovely old sundial standing here as a reminder of that endlessly ticking passage of time. And there's something rather appropriate about finding a sundial in a place filled with reminders of mortality. The sun moves, the shadows move, the hours disappear, and the people beneath our feet remain silent. There's also an old watch house, another wonderful survival from the churchyard's history. And the lovely mounting steps, another little feature that might easily be overlooked if you weren't actually looking for historic details. These are the things I love about old churchyards. You can walk through one dozens of times and still discover something you'd never noticed before. And then, as if the 1461 stone wasn't enough, I encountered another absolute gem. This one is carved with a rather crude but wonderfully evocative, almost life-size figure of a man. And once again, there is Latin. Once again, there's an inscription. And once again, there is a date. The Roman numerals reveal 1588. Another incredible discovery. Another person who's been waiting here quietly for centuries. And there's something rather wonderfully atmospheric about these old carved figures. They're not polished, they aren't perfect. They don't have the refined beauty of later monuments. They're crude, they're worn, they're unmistakably human. And that to me is exactly what makes them so fascinating. You can almost feel the hand of the 16th century mason in the carving. You can look at the face and wonder who this person was. What did he do? Who mourned him? Who stood here when this stone was new? And what did this churchyard look like when, in 1588, was the present rather than history? That's the magic of places like this. They collapse time. You can be standing here in 2026 and then suddenly you're looking at 1588 or 1461 or one of the wonderfully preserved 17th century stones, and for a moment the centuries between you and the person commemorated on that stone disappear. Even the sundial, lovely though it is and listed in its own right, almost became an afterthought after the treasures this churchyard revealed to me. The sundial is Grade 2 listed, dating probably from the early 18th century, because by then I was completely distracted by the dead, as usual. And that's why I think St Andrew's Churchyard in Leyland has become one of my favourite places. It isn't simply because it's old. It isn't simply because there are some beautiful stones. It's because of the layers. Medieval history, 16th century memorials, 17th century gravestones, 18th century stones, a Victorian later churchyard and landscape, a sundial marking the passage of time, a watch house, mounting steps, and everywhere you look, fragments of people who once belonged to this place. But for me, that extraordinary stone of Joannes Jacobs, 1461, is a jewel in the crown. A learned man, a Latin inscription, a reference to Horace, and Libitina, the Roman goddess of funerals, carved into 15th century Lancashire memorials. Honestly, what more could a cemetery lady possibly want? I adore this place. And I have a feeling I haven't finished exploring it yet, because the wonderful thing about old churchyards is they always have another secret. You just have to stop, look down and read the stones. And sometimes, if you're very lucky, the stones will tell you something extraordinary.